All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we will make a start about now. I should introduce myself. My name's Rob McIver. If you don't know me, I'm the director of the Scripture, Spirituality and Society Research Centre here at Avondale University. And I extend a very warm welcome to those in the room and those on Zoom who've probably been patiently waiting since the hour turned. I don't know if it's any comfort to those on Zoom, but there is a good number of people looking very happy, sitting in the back row particularly, and they have found many good things on the table that was waiting for them as they turn up. Today's presentation is brought to us, and we were wondering how we should introduce the team. It is multidisciplinary. It extends at least from the arts to the seminary, and one of them assured me, yes, they work in admin, but they really belong to arts. So let's call it a combination of arts and theology. And let me introduce your first speaker, Daniel Carrigy. Come on up, Daniel, and I'll let you introduce your team.
Thanks, Rob. Well, I just hope that our presentation today gives you as much warmth and happiness as the food that has been so kindly provided by Rob. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Daniel Carrigy, and I am a senior lecturer in modern history and English here at Avondale. My wonderful colleagues today are Lynnette Lounsbury. She's the head of School of Arts and Business. Wendy Jackson, the head of seminary here at Avondale. Brooke Twine, who is one of our sessional lecturers in history, as well as Luke Webster, who has multiple hats. Alongside being in the executive office, he's also one of our sessional lecturers in arts as well. So we are very excited to talk to you today about our current research on Gen AI in history, curriculum and pedagogy. And so without further ado, I'd love to jump in and share with you what our research is about and what we have found so far. But in his article in the Journal of Curriculum Studies, John Nichol argues that history educators in both secondary and higher education have an imperative to teach effective and ethical use of artificial intelligence. Likewise, Richard Ennals, in an article for Teaching History, advocated for the use of artificial intelligence in history curriculum and pedagogy. He maintains that history and artificial intelligence research have a great deal to contribute to each other. Now, at this point, you might be wondering, how is this any different to anything that you might have already heard about Gen AI and education? But what if I told you that Nichol and Ennals did not write about history education and AI in the last 5 years? What if I told you that they didn't even publish their work in the last 10 years? How would you feel if I told you that they didn't even publish their work this century? These two articles actually appeared in the mid-1980s, more than 40 years ago, and several decades before the advent of smartphones, social media, and generative AI. Now, truthfully, humans have been fascinated by the concept of artificial intelligence for centuries. In the Iliad, the Greek poet Homer envisioned tools and furniture that operated as automatons in the realm of the gods. In the Odyssey, he described ships that navigated by their own thought rather than human hands. Famously, in the Middle Ages, Roger Bacon supposedly attempted to build a brass head that could answer any question put to it. He's attempted there. The rise of generative AI in recent years speaks to humanity's long-held fascination with automatons and artificial intelligence. However, it is important to recognize that the advent of Gen AI, something that we are all wrestling with, is a historical moment itself. Whilst artificial intelligence technologies have existed for decades, Gen AI has produced an epoch in which humans can almost instantaneously create images, text, videos, and even computer codes. Historians have, of course, sought to grapple with the tension between the fact that Gen AI offers immense administrative benefits, but at the same time poses significant existential and ethical challenges regarding historical record keeping, analysis, and the teaching of history. In August 2025, the American Historical Association released their guiding principles for artificial intelligence in history education, in which they asserted that while generative AI is undeniably powerful, it cannot replace human teachers. The most extreme proposals to automate education betray a fundamental misunderstanding of teaching and learning, the core competencies we aim to cultivate in students, and the deeply human-centered work of education. Indeed, the rapid adoption of AI tools suggests that it has never been more important, they argue, to appreciate the complexity of our shared past and what it means to be human. So our research today is aimed at this precise intersection between the undeniable power of Gen AI to enhance teaching and the reality that it cannot replace human educators. It seeks to add to the growing literature regarding Gen AI in history education by providing specific, tangible examples of how Gen AI can be used efficiently, effectively, and ethically in history education in the tertiary sector. In doing so, it seeks to provide historians and history academics with blueprints for how AI can be used to enhance assessment design, aid in curriculum development, and assist with the creation of educational resources. All the while reaffirming the role of the historian and the educator as a fundamentally irreplaceable human in history education. And here to talk to us, first of all, about AI and ethics in history, I'd love to introduce Wendy.
As AI increasingly mediates our access to the past, it raises important ethical questions. And this section considers ethical issues in relation to AI in the light of the ethical guidelines produced by scholarly societies of historians, which focus primarily on integrity, careful research and documentation, transparency, and accountability. I begin by thinking about the idea of integrity. Now, as educators, we have tended to focus on whether students are cheating by using AI or whether the AI output provides hallucinations, such as fabricated references or convincing but historically inaccurate texts and images. Surprisingly, these may occur even when AI is used for non-generative purposes. Now, let me illustrate that, because I always thought, oh, only if you're using it generatively is this going to be an issue. Well, Maxim Topaz, and this is quoted in an article in Fortune 500 just this week in relation to a Lancet article, is a professor of Columbia University. And he reports that even though he only uses AI for a grammar check and for final tidying up of formatting, he discovered that AI had inserted a fabricated reference in his work. And he didn't discover this until the journal wrote back to him and said there was a fabricated reference in his work. In another instance, a team of historians were trying to create a chatbot with an ethical bent. They found that AI actually wanted to fill all the gaps in the information that it actually fed it. It's therefore, I would suggest, imperative to check carefully after any use of AI, regardless of how minor it might be. Careful scrutiny, including verification of all information and sources, needs to be built into everyday workflows. But hallucinations are not the only problem or the only threat to AI's truthful representation of information. One must also consider algorithmic discrimination and bias. Murphy, for instance, in 2019, illustrated with an example of facial recognition software which misclassified African American and Latino senators as criminals. On a similar sort of study, Leslie in 2025 noted that there were problems with bias identifying people from marginal groups in historical photographs. AI therefore cannot be considered to be neutral, rather as a system conforming to the biases and values on which it is trained. Consequently, it's important for both historians and their students to understand the biases which are inherent in AI outputs and to know how to assess material critically for author bias, cultural cues, and hidden motivations. Well, what about other concerns? Well, lack of transparency is another ethical concern. The processes and reasoning by which AI comes to conclusions are almost non-existent, right? They're totally concealed. We can't see how it comes to its conclusion, giving rise to what we call a black box terminology. And this directly challenges the historian's transparency in the use of sources and evidence, as well as justification of their conclusions. While limited in our ability to address the AI processing issues, historians in the classroom have the responsibility to model transparency in their use and engagement with AI and require the same of their students. Good practice will not only mention AI use, but also which tool is being used and how it has been used, such as AI-assisted idea generation or AI-assisted editing. The third area I want to mention briefly is the area of data use and privacy. AI is trained on large amounts of publicly available data, and this includes copyrighted materials, which are used without the knowledge and permission of the individual who created them. There is thus high potential for infringement of both copyright and intellectual property in its output. When engaging with AI, individuals provide even more data to AI for their training, unless they specifically opt out by changing settings. These things raise issues and serious questions around consent, data ownership, and accountability for what has been produced. And we don't have time to discuss all the things I have listed on the slide today, but I would suggest that as research guidelines generally hold individuals accountable for submissions, even if AI is used, you need to take care in evaluating your outputs.
AI and assessment design. Similarly, Stephen Mintz argues that the future of history education lies in shifting students from being passive consumers of information to active participants in the construction of their historical knowledge. So Mintz sees AI-powered softwares as holding genuine promise for transforming assessment by personalizing the inquiry pathways. And this is the part that really interests me, this idea of personalizing learning a little bit more. Scaffolding engagement with primary sources into assessment design and through real-time feedback on student interpretations and ideas. Leandro Azevedo's work from the University of Sao Paulo offers another really valuable perspective as it illustrates how AI can be used to analyze student work both individually and collectively to look for areas of poor understanding, for conceptual errors, which can then be addressed immediately in the next version of the assessment. Students could be assessed in multiple parts, with AI identifying immediately what they need to be strengthened on and learn in the next part of the assessment. While there's many ways in which AI can be used within history assessment design, our research proposes 3 concrete applications. First, educators can use AI to generate assessment rubrics and marking criteria tailored to specific learning outcomes. But we already know this. The real gift of this is that while rubrics are extremely time-consuming, they also need to be agile as outcomes, content, and learning strategies evolve. By prompting a model with the unit's learning objectives and the type of task, educators can rapidly produce these multi-level rubrics, but they also provide ones that can be easily refined and recontextualized. AI becomes a productivity tool for the educator, but it also makes it possible to be able to nimbly adapt. Secondly, AI can be used to generate a bank of differentiated assessment questions from a single topic. This approach, informed by Mintz's advocacy on personalized inquiry pathways, allows for a greater variety in assessment stimuli while reducing the risk of contract cheating. The educator can prompt an AI to produce variations of a source-based question, each using a different primary source type or an analytical lens, and then select those best suited to the cohort's level and the unit's learning outcomes. In each of these applications, the role of the human historian remains central: to evaluate, to refine, and to contextualize what AI produces, ensuring that assessment remains intellectually rigorous, historically grounded, and of course, pedagogically purposeful. To illustrate this practice, consider a university assessment on the Battle of Kadesh, 1200 BC. Rather than issuing a single essay to the students, the educator prompts an AI to generate role-based source questions of equivalent analytical difficulty. Each student gets a different identity, so perhaps a charioteer, a foot soldier, someone from Egypt, someone from the Hittite side, and they receive a curated primary source connected to that role. Each question asks the students to analyze their source from their assigned perspective, evaluate its reliability, and then to explain what it conceals as much as it reveals. The questions are structured parallel, but the specific content differs enough to make generating these questions and answers difficult for students. The result is a scalable, academically rigorous assessment that would have taken hours to design manually. Thirdly, a more innovative and less orthodox approach of AI, following the model outlined by Azevedo and extended by Hickey, suggests that students could be asked to engage in a scaffolding exchange with an AI-generated historical persona. For example, a Roman tribune reporting from Colonia in Britannia, and then produce a reflective analysis critiquing the accuracy of the AI, the limitations of its responses. And this kind of task not only requires students to demonstrate content knowledge, but it also develops the critical thinking skills that are foundational to historical practice.
Okay, me again, here to talk about AI and curriculum design in history. Now, in the context of the opportunities and challenges that AI poses for university history classrooms, recent scholarship has heavily focused on ethics and assessment design, as we've just seen from Wendy and Lynnette. For instance, two recent special issues from leading history journals, specifically the American Historical Review and History Australia, featured numerous articles examining the benefits and ethics of incorporating AI into source analysis and assessment design. However, crucially missing from both these special issues was an analysis of how AI can be incorporated into one of our core areas of teaching, curriculum design. Such a mission is, of course, despite the fact that seminal literature on Gen AI in higher education has already analysed the benefits of using AI in curriculum design. For example, Pritin Shah explains that Gen AI can be used as what he terms a brainstorming buddy when it comes to developing curriculum. Cecilia Sayuk-Chan and Tom Colleton argue that educators can employ Gen AI to develop detailed unit guides. And such an assertion actually aligns with the perspective of historian Michelle Arrow, who asserts that whilst AI should be left out of academic writing, admits it can have its place in more rudimentary documents, specifically, she argues, the boilerplate text of a unit guide. So our research sought to respond to this gap in extant scholarship. We utilised 3 Gen AI platforms to develop and assess curriculum for a first-year Australian history unit. For this exercise, we utilised ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, as well as a paid Claude subscription, which crucially features a highly touted research mode. Whilst the extent of the prompts and a discussion of all the findings goes beyond the scope of our presentation today, there were some crucial takeaways. Now, each platform was given the same original prompt. Write me a first-year university subject on Australian history, complete with schedule, readings, and assessments. Now, all 3 AI platforms were able to quickly generate a 12 to 13-week syllabus, complete with a detailed schedule, readings, and assessment. The most advantageous aspect of this generated content was, of course, the unit schedule, as the Gen AI could quickly provide a scaffold for the historical educator to fill in. However, it quickly became apparent that subject matter expertise was crucial in this exercise, both in the context of tertiary education and history. For instance, many generated syllabi from these platforms featured 5, even 6 assessments, clear evidence of over-assessment. One generated example, for instance, featured 6 assessments with a 2,500-word research essay in week 11, followed by a take-home exam a mere fortnight later. Of particular concern was the fact that all 3 models produced non-existent journals in their reading lists. ChatGPT produced more than 10 hallucinated journal articles. Copilot had 4, whilst Claude featured only 1. Crucially, when each model was challenged on these incorrect citations, only Claude was able to amend it. Each model was able to produce a helpful scaffold for the weekly lecture material, in truth, but again, research became a core issue here. For example, even with its highly touted research mode enabled, Claude's development of a 100-word lecture outline frequently cited Encyclopedia Britannica, Wikipedia, and even book blurbs from Amazon as the foundation of its research. That being said, one of the more helpful uses of Gen AI involved asking it to assess the teaching schedule for a de-identified history unit. In this instance, both Microsoft Copilot and Claude produced helpful considerations, suggesting ideas for the rescheduling of topics to produce a tighter unit narrative, as well as suggestions for reducing coverage of certain events, which can prompt the historian to healthily question which meta-narratives of history they might be prioritizing in their curriculum and which areas might, in truth, warrant further consideration for expansion or reduction. Ultimately, our research actually pushes back on the argument of Chan and Colleton that AI can be used to produce detailed curriculum. At best, AI can be used to produce a scaffold for curriculum that a historical educator with subject matter expertise can then develop and populate. However, in no way, shape, or form should Gen AI be considered to be a co-designer or co-researcher in the context of curriculum. And to talk to us about AI and teaching resources, I'm going to hand over to Brooke.
In 1968, French historian Emmanuel Leroy-Ladurie wrote, "The historian of tomorrow will be a programmer or he will not exist." The history educator of 2026 is now a digital resource creator using AI capabilities to enhance the cognitive experience of students. In this regard, the creation of learning resources requires a collegial relationship between the educator and AI, with AI being the personal assistant in the classroom, not a replacement teacher. Diseaser in 2024 states that when ChatGPT was first released in 2022, it became a source of parlor tricks. Furthermore, it became a source of cheating panic, much like the advent of the pocket calculator in 1971. In tertiary education, the goal is to create resources for career historians working in niche fields that involve translation, repositories, and advanced keyword search capability. Azevedo and Hickey see the potential for AI historical resources as a journey into the past or bridging the past and present. These concepts have great potential for critical thinking skills, ensuring that evaluative analysis is the core of the activities. Effective planning and presentation can lead to valuable, and quoted from Hickey, bespoke educational content that can allow for authentic evaluative learning opportunities with an independent creative output that is required for arts and humanities. The development of primary source skills analysis through the integration of AI allows for the illumination of marginalized groups, translations of ancient regional dialects, and incredibly fragile artifacts. AI can create data sets, allowing students to accurately search primary sources where AI can predict patterns, making the historical research process more efficient and targeted. In his research on how machine learning aids archaeological analysis of the Dead Sea Scrolls, Maruf Dali explains how AI is used for translating handwritten texts, which are mostly on delicate parchment, some on papyrus and one on copper. The text is extracted, processed, and extensively examined to gain insights. Database patterns on the handwriting can assist in search groupings by unknown authors. This eliminates constant handling of fragile fragments and an end to manual, laborious, and complicated source exploration. In turn, this allows for depth and accessibility of research for students like never before. A critical detachment exercise requires students to put aside any emotive attachment to a source and also their trust of the resources being provided by the teacher in order to encourage objectivity and critical thinking. I took the famous image from the D-Day landings on June 6, 1944, and asked ChatGPT to include 3 very specific anomalies. Can you identify them?
I'll be your go-between, Brooke, in case people have...
I was going to say, she's not being rhetorical.
No.
Yeah, she'd like to know if you can spot any
actual anomalies.
inaccuracies.
There are 3.
Daniel Renault says helmet bottom right, which I agree with, even though I know it's not one of the 3.
See, this is what we don't want in our classroom. Silence when the lecturer asks a question.
I believe
top
we have
right.
a. Oh, so Lynnette has said top right. What's top right, Lynnette?
Everyone can see there's 3 jet planes in the top
3
right.
fighter
Yes.
jets.
That is one I specifically included.
Did they have basing in those days?
They did. So on the Normandy landings, many weapons were wrapped in plastic to stop sand and grit from getting in them. But that's a great guess, Rob. We did have a hand from Jack. Jack, what was your guess? There is a vehicle on the beach. Brooke, I presume that was one of them?
No, there was a vehicle on the beach.
Oh, very good. It
Yes.
looks like a 1920s automobile, but that's just from here.
Okay, I will help you. So we have the landscape. The beach was flat. This is more of a Gallipoli landscape that I included. And also in the water, we have a very spooky figure that is facing us. That is actually a German soldier jumping out with the Americans.
Yep, okay, yes, very good. Nice.
Yes.
Thank you, Brooke.
Over to Luke.
So it's my responsibility to wrap up very briefly our presentation today. I express my gratitude and appreciation to my colleagues for the opportunity to work together with them on this, and I'm very glad to summarize what we have learned for you now. Most interestingly, we have learned that human attention to the ethics and use of machines that can simulate or replace human behavior, as Norbert Wiener wrote in his foundational work on cybernetics, The Human Use of Human Beings in 1950, is not a new phenomenon, and that much valuable work has been done in this area that can be applied to our adoption of generative AI tools. We have learnt that the discipline of history is more closely connected to the use of AI than is first apparent, and that historians have an important role to play in the ethical and effective development and adoption of this new technology. Most practically, we have learned, as Danny Leo, Stephen Mintz, Sarah Midford, and many others, including academics here at Avondale, attest, innovations to adapt assessment design to account for the abilities of AI tools reveal the enduring truth that student effort and intellectual development are the core of the assessment task. The essay, while accurate enough when genuine time is spent and mental effort is exerted, has always measured student effort and growth somewhat indirectly. And the necessity of the present situation is as good a time as any to innovate new assessment design. Most importantly, we have learned that while generative AI tools are undoubtedly powerful, they cannot replace human experience, knowledge, and judgment. In assessment design and delivery, in curriculum design, in research, and in public communication, qualified people must still have key roles to play. Furthermore, to achieve the best results with these new tools, human expertise is essential to create ethical frameworks, provide ground truth data, and check for accuracy and factuality. The truth of this is directly contradictory to the marketing of many of these generative AI tools, which claim that people without skills can use them to do things they would not otherwise be able to do by themselves. Our focus, therefore, should be on finding the best way to use these new tools. For in doing so, we will not only avoid the mistakes of unethical or counterproductive usage, but also make improvements on the work that we are already doing. For all the disruption that AI is causing for study and assessment in the field of history, there is therefore also a golden opportunity to intentionally, enthusiastically, bravely explore ways to do research, design curriculum, and assess our students' processes, efforts, and intellectual development. Being spurred by the necessity to adapt, we may yet find that in the end our efforts will be rewarded with a pedagogy superior to that which was left behind. Thank you.
Oh, hey, that was a lot of fun. Did you notice the pictures coming up on the slides? I particularly enjoy them. We do 2 of these a year, and I was just going through my mind, second semester. Is there an obvious choice of a topic to present second semester? And actually, I'm spoiled. This group here has been supported by one of the small research grants from the SSRC, and we listed recently the small grants that came that have been awarded in the last 3 years. And it's an extraordinary range of different types of research that's happening in the field that is covered by the scope of the SSRC. So just watch this space. There's going to be at least one really exciting, interesting thing, and I'm going to have to make a challenging choice between various options. So it's my happy choice, happy duty to thank the presenters, and thank you all for coming. And I look forward to meeting you next semester at our next SSRC presentation. Thank you.